Hello, children. I hope all of you are happy and healthy. Welcome to today's class. Today, we will enjoy a beautiful short story written by Alphonse Daudet, a French novelist, poet, and short story writer. The story is titled The Last Lesson. This is the first lesson in your textbook, Flamingo. It's a story of change seen through the eyes of a child named Franz. The story is set during the time of Franco-Prussian War of 1870. In 1870, the Prussian forces, that is the present-day Germany, attacked and captured the parts of France. The historically French districts of Alsace and Lorraine passed into Prussian hands. The new Prussian rulers discontinued the teaching of French in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. Alphonse Daudet was deeply affected by the Franco-Prussian War, and many of his works contain a moving depiction of the suffering during this period. Dear children, let me ask you a question. What is the one unifying thread that binds the people of Kerala together, or Tamil Nadu, or say Karnataka? It's their language, isn't it? The language is not a mere string of words. It is not only a form of communication but also carries culture and identity within. Our mother tongue is our identity. It is the unifying thread that binds us. Have you ever thought what would happen to us if all of a sudden our mother tongue is taken away from us? Through the story, The Last Lesson, the author highlights the pain inflicted on the common man by the conquerors when their right to speak their language is taken away. Now, let's begin the lesson. The Last Lesson by Alphonse Daudet. I started for school very late that morning and was in a great dread of scolding, especially because Mr. Hamel had said he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. It was all much more tempting than the rule of participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. So, the main character, Franz, spelling is F-R-A-N-Z. That is the name of the main character, and the country is F-R-A-N-C-E. So, please know the difference, children. The main character, Franz, he started for school very late on that particular day. His French teacher, Mr. Hamel, was going to ask questions on participles of French language, which Franz had not prepared. To avoid being scolded, he was tempted to run away from school and spend the day outdoors. The nature with a bright day, the chirping of the birds, the sight of the Prussian soldiers drilling, they were much more welcoming than the class. But he resisted all those temptations and hurried off to school. Now back to your textbook. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer, and I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? Then, as I hurried as fast as I could go, the blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice, reading the bulletin, called after me, "Don't go very fast, so fast, Ba. You will get to school in plenty of time." I thought he was making fun of me and reached Mr. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. So as little Franz passed by the town hall, he saw a big crowd in front of the bulletin board. The boy wondered why so many people are there. What can be the matter now? Because for the last 2 years, all the bad news had come from the bulletin board there. The people got the news of the lost battles, other important information only from the bulletin board. Children, there are two words there. One is apprentice. Apprentice is a person who is learning a trade from a skilled employer. And you see the blacksmith, watcher, he was there reading the bulletin board along with his apprentice. Okay, and watcher is a surname. A surname is a hereditary name common to all members of a family. Now back to your textbook. Usually when the school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in street. The opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. I had counted on commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places and Mr. Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how blushed and how frightened I was. But nothing happened. Mr. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." So, usually when the school began, there was a lot of hustle and bustle, a lot of excited movement, activities and movement. And usually, little Franz would depend on these commotion. Commotion means a state of confusion or noisy disturbance to get to his desk without being noticed. But that day it was different. The school was as quiet as Sunday morning. Now he went in there before everybody. He was scared where Mr. Hamel would scold him for being late. But nothing of that sort happened. Mr. Hamel saw him and asked very kindly to go to take his seats. Now back to your textbook. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and little black silk cap, all embroidered, and he never wore except on inspection and prize days. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were usually empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Huzzer with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several other besides. Everybody looked sad, and Huzzer had brought an old primer, thumbed at edges, and he held it open on his knees with a great spectacles lying across the pages. Once settled down in his place, Franz noticed some unusual things. Mr. Hamel was in his special green coat that he wore only on inspection and prize days. The whole school seemed so strange and silent. But the most surprising thing was the presence of village elders. They were sitting very quietly on the back benches. There is a word there, primer. Mr. Hauser has brought with him a primer. A primer is a textbook for teaching reading, such as alphabet book. Now back to the textbook. While I was wondering about it, Mr. Hamel mounted his chair and in same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French class. I want you to be very attentive. What a thunderclap these words were to me. So what happened, children? As Franz was wondering why the school is silent, why the villagers were there, Mr. Hamel mounted his chair and spoke in a very serious tone that the order came from Berlin saying or asking to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine, and that is going to be their last French class. And these words spoken by this announcement given by Mr. Hamel was like a thunderclap. Thunderclap means a startling or an unexpected one to him. It was like a bolt from the blue. Now back to your textbook. Oh, the wretches. That was what they had put up in the town hall. My last French class. Why? I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn anymore. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Saar. My books that seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of saints were old friends now I couldn't give up. And Mr. Hamel too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. Poor man. It was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. And now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were sorry too that they had not gone to school more. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. The words spoken by Hamel was a thunderclap to Franz, and he now realized what was written on the bulletin board. The order from Berlin brought a sense of repentance among the people who, in spite of having time, did not learn their language. Little Franz felt sorry for not learning his lessons. He never liked his books. He did not have any interest in grammar and history. But now, when it was taken away, there was a sudden love for his language, for learning. He started liking Mr. Hamel. The idea that he would not be teaching him anymore made Franz forget all about his ruler and how cranky this teacher was. Cranky means bad-tempered or strange, eccentric. I think you are reminded of another teacher, a teacher that you have learned in class 11th, Mr. Crocker Harris from Browning version. So, coming back to your textbook, while I was thinking all of this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule of participle all through very loud and clear and without one mistake? But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there, holding to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look. So as he was thinking about all this, Mr. Hamel called his name to recite. Even though he wanted to say the rules of the participles very loud and clear, he got mixed up and confused and he was not able to say. But Mr. Hamel did not scold him. Now back to your textbook. I heard Mr. Hamel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we had said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time. I will learn it tomorrow. And now you see where we have come out. That's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. Now these fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your language? But you are not the worst, poor little France. We all have a great deal to reproach ourselves with. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills so as to have a little more money. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my plants instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? So Mr. Hamel expressed his concern that the people of Alsace gave no importance to French language. They put off learning in their language, thinking that there is enough time. He says that they were all at fault for not being eager enough to learn. The students put off learning thinking that there was enough time. The parents preferred the children to work in a farm or a mill to earn more. Mr. Hamel blamed himself for giving the students a holiday when he had to go for fishing. So Mr. Hamel says that everyone, each and everyone, was responsible for not learning their language. There is a word there. There are one phrase is there. Put off. Put off means to delay or move an activity to a later period. So they postpone there. Put off means postponing their studies. And another one is reproach. Reproach means blame. So Mr. Hamel blames students, parents and himself for not learning the language. Children, we'll continue the rest of the story in the next class. Before winding up, I will just quickly go through the important points that we discussed today, starting with first one, France's reluctance to go to school because of two reasons. One is he was late and he had not prepared the rules of participles. Second, the nature outside was much more warm, bright, making him stay back. Second one is the crowd in front of the bulletin board. Third point, the unusual calmness at the school. Next point, the changes France notices as he enters the school. First one is the school was as quiet as Sunday morning. Next one is Mr. Hamel was wearing his special dress, the green coat, which he usually wears only on special occasions like prize distribution day. And third one is the presence of the villagers at the back bench, at the back of the classroom. And the last one is everything looked very strange and solemn. Then next one, another important point is what is the announcement made by Mr. Hamel, that is order came from Berlin saying that German will be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. That is going to be the last French class. A new German teacher will be arriving the very next day. So next point is a sudden love for learning and teacher in France. So when he realized that there is no more day left for learning his language, there was a sudden love for learning and a sudden love for his teacher. And the last part where Mr. Hamel tells the students, parents and he himself are at fault for not learning the language. Now with this, I would like to close today's section. Thank you and take care.